Surveys conducted in India, and which for the first time told us about the greatness of the Indian education system. So his daughter, Geeta Dharampal, was his guide. Dr. Kakkar's PhD dissertation highlighted the continuities between pre-colonial pathshalas or indigenous village schools and educational institutions established by nationalists in the 19th and 20th century. His dissertation documented the history of one of the most significant reformist educational enterprises in colonial India, namely the Dayananda Anglo-Vedic (DAV) movement. Dr. Kakkar has authored various articles and research papers on Indian education and Indian knowledge systems that highlight the continuities of Indian history and culture. In February 2002, Dr. Kakkar was awarded a one-year prestigious research fellowship from the Motwani Jadeja Family Foundation in Palo Alto, USA, to write a book manuscript on the history of Gurukulas and Pathshalas in India. So it's in progress? Okay. Since October 2023, Dr. Kakkar is a fellow at the Prime Minister's Museum and Library in New Delhi. Oh, wonderful. That reminds me, I have to visit it when I pass by Delhi. So Dr. Kakkar will be speaking about the Jati, I don't know the exact title, it's the Families and Jatis, how they were facilitating transmission of knowledge. So let's hear from Dr. Kakkar.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So it's 2:10, okay. Namaste everyone. Thank you for coming and attending this conference. I thank Indica especially Dr. Nagaraj Paturiji and Shahana ji for having me here and for accepting my paper for this wonderful conference in this great historical city of Ujjain. Today I am going to talk about the role of families and Jatis in the transmission of knowledge in Indian education system. But before I do that, I'll give a brief background about why this is important. Okay, so I'll just jump right in. Okay. So why is this lecture important? When most of us talk about Indian education system or history of Indian education, if you ask anybody, the first thing they'll tell you is that, okay, we had great universities like Nalanda and Takshashila and many other great centers. But the question is, was Indian education only limited to universities or great centers? The second question, and why this lecture is important, is we come to know from all the records that we have that the various sections of Indian society, all the classes, were educated in some way. Even the farmer was educated, the Mali was educated, every section of society was educated. So were all these people were educated in universities? Do you think they went to Nalanda? Not necessarily, right? So where were they educated? Where were the different sections of Indian society educated? Surely there were universities, as Shahana ji has shown in her book. There were a great number of centers in India for learning. But was Indian education only restricted to centers of universities? If that was the case, then we wouldn't have such a vast section of Indian society being educated. So that is why this lecture is important, to understand the various modes of transmission of knowledge in India. And that is why I'll highlight today the role of families and Jatis. Can you please maintain silence? I'm just getting disturbed. Thank you. So this was Gandhiji's speech that he gave in 1931. He said that, this is very famous, that he said that India was more literate before the British came, and then he said our education system was like a beautiful tree that got perished because of the British. That led Dharampal ji, who is my inspiration. Dharampal ji, we all know about him. His dates were 1922 to 2006. He wrote this book based on Gandhiji's statement. This book was called The Beautiful Tree, in which he published the extracts from surveys that were conducted by the British. For the first time, he showed us that there was an Indian system of education before the British came, because we often believe that it was only the British who made us educated, right? British gave us railways, they gave us roads, they gave us democracy, so probably they also made us educated. But what Dharampalji showed us was that before the British came, we had a very vast system of education. This is Dharampalji's book, The Beautiful Tree, from which I am now trying to follow in his footsteps. I'll tell you how. So these were some of the surveys from time to time that Dharampalji highlighted in his book. Various surveys were conducted in the 19th century on Indian indigenous education to know about the state of indigenous pathshalas. What did these surveys reveal? Well, these surveys told us that every village had a pathshala, every village had a school. Okay, and that the purpose of that pathshala was to impart basic numeracy, basic reading, writing, arithmetic, and basic functions which are important for the people of that community. Okay, there were also bazaar schools, which means schools for children of merchants and traders, to give them instruction in arithmetic and in their account systems. Okay, apart from this, the surveys that Dharampalji highlighted in his book revealed that there were higher learning centers like which they called colleges, you can call them Sanskrit Gurukuls, for teaching a wide range of subjects of Shastras. Okay. Okay. I think, yeah. But what is the problem? What are the limitations now in this colonial discourse? Of course, it reveals a lot of information about all these number of schools and colleges that existed. But there is much more to the story of Indian education than just this number of schools and colleges. Because as I was stating in the introduction, Indian education was not limited to only schools and colleges. The British, when they were surveying our education system, they were only interested in looking and documenting the institutional frameworks where knowledge was imparted. That is why they could not document much of the Indian education system, because that did not come under their purview. Okay, so one of the major problems that we still have, even in our current discourse of education, is that we only talk about the expansion of schools, colleges, and universities, which is of course a legacy from the colonial past, about literacy and about how we can improve it. Okay, but we don't know that there are actually a wide range of modes of transmission. In India, there were various modes of knowledge transmission because of the wide range of knowledge traditions. As you know already, the Indian knowledge system consists of 18 Vidyas, classical disciplines, and 64 Kalas, arts and sciences. Given the wide range of these systems, it is obvious that all of these systems must have had their own mode of transmission, not necessarily through institutions. That is why this lecture is about what this mode of transmission was. Now, of course, the literature on education mostly focuses on institutions, that I've told you already. And even Dharampalji, in his book, he wrote that the number of scholars, even though he highlighted all the surveys, but he also pointed out, Dharampalji said that the number of scholars who are receiving their training at home is many times the number of scholars who are studying in institutions. So he recognized this fact. Yes. And that's where I am following in his footsteps and trying to do more research to find out what exactly Dharampalji was trying to say. So, family-based Gurukuls rarely found a place in the colonial surveys because, of course, they were not interested in serving those institutions. Now, let's find out what they were like. Okay. First of all, it is important to understand that the 64 Kalas that we talk about are hereditary in nature. This is documented in so many texts across all disciplines. Our Kalas, our 64 Kalas, are hereditary in nature. What does this mean? This means that they are passed down in the family. The Kalas are passed down in the family from generation to generation. And many of the terms that are used in the texts testify to the fact that these Kalas are hereditary, because the word itself, the word Kula or the word Puta, is itself used as a suffix for the particular craft, which signifies that they were definitely hereditary. Okay, the Jatis, for example, they talk about the son of a hunter, son of a carpenter. There are many terms like that. Okay, So the first point to understand is that the kalas were hereditary. Now let's understand how the different systems were there which were meant to transmit these kalas. Okay. So for example, if we talk about, let's say, education in crafts, it was done at home, schooling was mostly at home, and after learning this is one of the quotes. So after learning letters, the child was slowly introduced to the, drawing various figures, and then that's how they started learning the crafts. Okay. Again, Anand Kumara Swami writes this, that the child who is learning the craft, like let's say the son of a potter, he's generally starts learning at home. He's educated in the workshop of his father, and he generally starts learning by looking at real things and real problems. Okay. It's not. Okay, so now I will take up different disciplines to show you how knowledge was transmitted across different kinds of disciplines. For example, let's take the example of Ayurveda and see as an example how family played an important role in the knowledge transmission of Ayurveda. So in Kerala, there is a famous tradition and a famous family tradition which is called as the Ashtavadyans of Malabar. Ashtavadyans they are called because they have excelled, they have mastered 8 branches of Ayurveda. Okay, 8 branches of Ayurveda. That's why they are called Ashtavadyan families. These families have expertise from very ancient time, and the knowledge has been passed on to these families from generation to generation in all these 8 branches of Ayurveda. Okay, so let's look at who these Ashtavadyans were. So there were 18 families of these Ashtavadyans, and these accounts of these Vedyas, the traditional accounts of these Vedyas, tell us about these families, what their names were, who they were, in which villages they were staying, okay, and about which branches they were studying and how they were studying. That all is taught. For example, the most important text that was studied was the Ashtang Hridayam. And how the Ashtang Hridayam was studied, that is also mentioned in detail in the accounts of these families. Okay, so one of the families, there are 18 of them. Now, one of the families, to give an example, is the example of Vaidyamadham Valia Narayan Namboodir's family. So this is to give you an idea about people who ask for dates and evidence. This is what for them to show you that how from one generation to the next this tradition was passed on. And so these are names of just 3 generations, okay, that we have in the historical records that show us that right from the 19th century right to the 20th century, this knowledge of Ayurveda was passed on in the family from one generation to the next. So we have the names of these 3 generations of families. And these people were interviewed and they were asked about their tradition, and these accounts are available, and they have told about their way of learning and how they are trained in the family system. Okay. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it's. Thank you. This is one of the photographs of the Ashtavadyans of Malabar. Okay. Next. Similarly, in drama, there was again a family tradition, and the transmission of knowledge took place within certain families. Now, Kodiyatam, I don't know how many have heard about Kodiyatam. Kodiyatam is the only surviving form of Sanskrit drama that we have today in India. It's the only surviving form. Okay, the origins are long back. In 10th century, there was a king called Kulashekar. He wrote a drama, and then it came from there. So, but how is this tradition? How is this drama? This knowledge of this Kodiyatam passed on? It is not learned in some college or in some school. It is learned within the family. In fact, in Kodiyatam, the family itself is called Madham. The family is called a Madham. this is something very, very, unique, because in most of the cases people feel matham must be only referring to some formal institution, but in Kudiyatam the family itself is called a matham. Okay, so these people who learn this art learn it within the family. Again, 18 families are there traditionally, hereditary families that have this passed on this knowledge from one generation to the next generation, and all these 18 families names are known. Now there are until today, I mean at present, about 8 families survive out of these 18 families. Okay, so the interesting thing was that each temple was assigned to a particular family tradition. So not all the families performed in all the temples. There were temples dedicated to certain specific families who had expertise in particular aspects of this drama. For example, somebody would specialize in Vachika Abhinay, somebody would specialize in Angika Abhinay, okay, somebody would specialize in some other aspect of the drama form, and that family would be assigned a particular temple. So even today if you go to some temples, for example, I had the opportunity to visit the Kodal Manikyam temple in Irinalakuda. Okay, and I was blessed to have interviewed Amanur Madhava Chakyar, who is performing there. So his family has been given the right to perform in that temple. Similarly, there are other temples where other families have been given rights. What does this mean? This means those temples preserve the tradition of the family, and that family further develops that particular form of expertise in that. I have 5 minutes only. Oh, okay. I have many things to show, but okay, fine, no problem. So, the Amanur Chakyar Madam, as I was saying, this is a very important tradition. It goes back at least 500 years, and they tell us about all the names of the people who were coming in the generations. I had the blessing to interview Amanur Madhava Chakyar in the same tradition. He told me about all the people who had come in his family. So this is a matrilineal tradition. It goes from uncle to nephew. It doesn't go from father to son, because they live in the mother's house. So it goes from uncle to nephew. So he told me about all his uncles and their uncles, and how this knowledge passed on. It was fascinating to listen to him and to see him perform. And I'm sure if any of you ever wishes to watch a form of Sanskrit drama, you should watch Kodiyatam. Okay. This is their old home. This is the place where they originally trained. Now, of course, it is in a dilapidated condition, but it still exists. If you go to Irinalakuda, this is where the place where they trained. This looks like a kutambalam, to make it resemble like in a temple. This is the names of the people who were within the family. Okay. Now the next example is from architecture. Okay. In architecture also we have the same tradition of family as the mode of knowledge transmission. Okay. How do we know this? We know this from inscriptions. We get to know this from temple inscriptions, because the sthapatis who built the temples, they had their names inscribed and their lineage also inscribed on the temples. One of the famous inscriptions is from the temple of Jagdish temple in Udaipur, which was called the Jagannath Raya temple originally. Okay, so one of the inscriptions of that Jagannath Raya temple in Udaipur tells us about the family of sthapatis who built that temple. Who were these? They were the Bhangoda family. So they tell us that how they migrated from a place in Gujarat called Anilwara Patan, and they came to Mewad around 1388 CE, and their family then continued this tradition. That this is all in the inscription. So the temple inscriptions tell us about the family lineages and about the names of the people who were transmitting this knowledge. And in this Bhangoda family, there was this famous architect known as Mandan. People who are reading architecture, they may know about his name. He wrote a text called Rupa Mandan, which is very famous in architecture. This is the Jagdish temple in Udaipur. It's not going. Maybe it knows that my time is up. So, yeah, I want. Okay, it has. Oh, okay, fine. The same thing we find in pottery. In pottery also, the Kumhar tradition is very vibrant in many cities of India. One of the cities I had the fortune of visiting, and this is a town called Molela. Molela is a town near Udaipur, again short distance from Udaipur. They have the tradition of murtis, of making murtis. Okay, and then again, the family home itself is the workshop, and this person, his name is, I'll show you his photograph. His name is, this is the person, his name is, or was, now he is no longer alive. I had the blessing of interviewing him. His name was Mohan Lal Chaturbhuj Kumar. When I visited him and his workshop, he was very, very, candid, and told me about his family of potters, how his father and his grandfather was doing pottery, how he learned in the home itself, and what were the techniques that he learned. Okay, and he talked about, and now obviously he received a Padma Shri at that time. He's no longer alive now, but then again, pottery is another example of how knowledge is transmitted within the family home. So the family home was not just the family was not just a place of instruction, it was also the mode of knowledge transmission, because that knowledge was only maintained within the family. It was not possible to learn it outside. Thank you. I would like to conclude now. Thank you. I think that's.
Thank you, Ankur. And now it's open to the floor for Q&A. Anyone has a question? Please raise your hand. I'll pass the mic.
Ankur, very nice presentation. It's just a question is like when the families were all going by the tradition for so many, right?
Yes, yes.
When we do not acknowledge, or the society is not able to give them the right space and the, like Chakyar Kutu. There is one Chakyar Kutu in Mumbai also. There was one Chakyar Kutu Rajan.
Okay,
After that, there is nobody to continue it.
Right.
When these kind of traditions are disrupted by not acknowledging by the society or the people, etc., etc., is it justified when these people from the same tradition move to another? They go into architecture or engineering or tech. Today is IT or an AI which will come up. What is your opinion on that? Or will you still go back, help them to be from the dynasty only?
So the Chakyar family whom I interviewed, they said that it's their sacred duty to do this, and they have to do it anyway. They were doing it on rainy days, they're doing it on bad weather days, they had to do it. And they have some specific days in the year, they are called auspicious days in the calendar, in which they have to perform that. It is their sacred act for the deity, they have to do it. They told me they have to do it. So I think they will definitely continue because they are very committed. So the families, they don't see this just as a profession, they see it as their duty in life. I mean, that's their whole worldview. Okay, they don't have any, of course now there are some traditional families and people who are moving to other occupations for various reasons, as you have pointed out, but of course nobody would want that to happen, because we want our traditional arts and dance forms and drama forms to remain. And it is only through the families that they can remain. That's why out of 18 families, only 6 or 8 survive today. The remaining are lost. Either their descendants are no longer alive, or that knowledge has not disappeared within the family. So it is a diminishing form. I agree with you. But I think there is still hope, as long as there are people who are committed to do this thing. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, hi. So very good presentation. I had like just one question. I would like to know your opinion on it. So supposing that this tradition of having, let's say regarding crafts, pottery. So supposing that pottery was still carried out within families and being continued the way it was back in then. Do you think with the time moving and the exposure to internet and the other parts of the world and changing demands would have still ended up the Indian education society being the way it is now? Because if you try to understand this, the demand for pottery is not as it used to be back then, right? So do you think we would eventually end up having an education system where students would go into schools and have basic education completed, post which they were based on the market demands, pursue a specialization that they find suitable for themselves?
So you are saying, your question is that whether this is dependent on market demand or not. Is that what you're saying?
No, no, no. My question is, would this method have been survived had the British not entered India?
It survived even after they entered. So that's what I'm showing. The dates and the families whom I'm talking about are very much within the colonial period, in the 18th century, in the 19th century. Okay, so I'm trying to show a continuity actually. From Dharampalji's work, it became clear that there was a system even when the British came. He talked about the surveys that he published were in the 18th and 19th century. When the British came here, of course, they disrupted the system, and because of their economic policies, it got a big hit and a lot of it got dismantled. But still, it survived in a tiny form, and it survived even after the British came. So it is not that it didn't survive. Okay. Other thing is that as far as the market demand is concerned, so if you talk about the pottery as a craft, it depends on many things, not just on market demand, because you see that the potter's vessels and his items are used in a variety of purposes. They are used in temples, they are used for rituals, they are used for the local community that demands them. So when I went to interview Mohanlal ji in Molela, he told me that there is a group of the people who come there. I don't know their name. I've forgotten the name of that group, local group of people who come and they perform their puja there, and they have their own tradition of doing that. And then they do that, they also do many other rituals, and they use all these items. So they are very much practical. It is not that they are impractical items. They are very much practical items, and they are in demand. In that society, they are in demand. So it is not that there is no demand for these items. As long as the traditions continue, all the traditions are connected. So it is not that, pottery is not connected to the Indian traditions, because as long as the other traditions are continuing, people will have a demand for these pottery, and especially the earthen-based items that they make.
Yeah,
Congratulations, Ankur, for a lovely presentation. I have one observation and a question. While you were presenting, I was reminded of Rabindranath Tagore, having been brought up in a homeschooling, what a kind of vibrant personality he turned out to be, as a poet, as well as a laureate, as well as, as an artist also. So that reminded me of Tagore when you were presenting. Secondly, my question is, what are the challenges that today, when we talk about homeschooling, right? So there are many parents, many families who believe in homeschooling. So amidst the traditional, now the traditional, which is the post-colonial education system, parallelly home family or homeschooling, that is again, parallelly running in the present world today. So what are the challenges amidst this changing system that is there? Secondly, how open are these 2 to 3 families now to educate and impart this family traditional to others who are not belonging to the family tradition? Right, have you interviewed them on that question? Maybe bothered you?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Let's take another question and then you can answer.
Okay.
It's okay, let him answer that.
Yes.
Okay, my question is sort of related to what she asked. So are there any new things that are taught given the present day and age from the, the senior to the apprentice, given the changing conditions of society, changing conditions of market, social things, various happening? What are the new things they're teaching, or something that's against what was taught earlier that they are modified now and changed?
Right. So I'll come to this question first and then to the previous question. Yes, these family traditions have made changes, and they have adapted in many different ways to the changing times. For example, in Kodiyatam, for example, they're using current themes. They're not, so originally it was only Sanskrit drama based only on the plays that were there, texts that were there. But now they're also taking up current themes. So they have provision within the tradition for commentary on current issues. So they bring that also. And then they bring students from, let's say, the nearby Gurukulam. They'll bring some students and then they'll talk about their tradition also. So they have space for that. They're also including members from outside the family setup. So I have seen people who are also being trained, not necessarily within the family, but also from outside. But of course, there is a certain way of measuring whether they are qualified enough to do that. So that is there. But yes, they are now they are being more flexible and open to the changing times. And yeah, I guess that answers your question. Anything else you want to ask? I mean, anything specific to this question? Okay. Against, I mean, that, but that would be against the tradition, right? Like, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm not really aware of that.
May I answer this question?
Yes.
Same topic. Ankur and myself also have been doing field work in the same area of family traditions, Jatis and their traditions. One very big example is, did you all hear about Cheriala paintings? There are these scroll paintings which come from a village near Warangal called Cherial. Originally, they were painting for the scroll-based narrative art performances. And by the time we went for fieldwork some 3 decades ago, that was dwindling. And we introduced them, and along with Kondapalli Sheshgir Rao Garu, to the Handicrafts Corporation of the Government of AP. And they were able to sell them as frames. They were big scrolls originally. They were able to sell as frames, and these frames became fashionable in the affluent families who never understand the frame. But that's just a scroll, some ethnic painting becomes as their family thing. And these family which was dwindling at that time, which started picking up in business, now became point of attraction for the whole village. Other villagers started coming to them to learn the same item. And then the family members who started moving away to IT, they started coming back. And because they already learned IT, they started establishing an internet portal for their business. Now they are doing both. The family members who have come back, they learned the art and they are creating new things. For example, originally they were making dolls for a doll-based narrative performance called Mande Chulu for the shepherd community, pastoral community. But now the same dolls they are selling as masks. They call it mask making. And all over India they are going for mask making workshops. And it is fashionable among the fashionable people today to attend these mask making workshops. What that mask means they don't understand. But at least they attend that. That is giving them a big business, and that has become an internet portal. All the digital opportunities that they are now exploring. So the family is doing both. The family tradition is continuing within the family. The other people are coming and learning. They have become teachers for all over the country in the art schools and general workshops also.
And also in the hearts, I think different hearts, they also, in the hearts also, they are selling these masks now. I've seen them in the, yeah. Yes.
One question.
Sorry, I lost the earlier question you were asking. That was about. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, homeschooling is a very different topic altogether, because I mean, my topic was about the traditional systems of learning and the crafts and the arts that were passed on. Homeschooling is a very different issue that will need a long time to discuss, so I would not go into that right now. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so in my conversations with my friend who actually goes to villages and learns from traditional textiles and handlooms, people from those family backgrounds and researches about this. So she often asks me this thing, so I wanted to highlight this. Basically, when she was in Kutch, Gujarat, that place, I'm sure you would have heard about it, the textiles and the weaving traditions there. So there is a specific one which I'm not getting the name, but Hindu weavers used to stitch saris which had like silk on the outside and cotton in the inside for Muslims. And this is a dying tradition. She mentioned there's only one man left in the whole village who knows how to make the machine that can weave that. So, and he's not ready to pass it on to anybody. So this is a situation, and she says that all the children in that village want to become YouTubers when they grow up. So this is a plight. So what would your response to be to this? Like,
I would suggest that, yes, there is a strand of people who are now moving more towards the new market that is online. But also, I think there's also a demand for the tradition. There's still a large demand for the traditional weavers. In Gujarat, for example, I also happened to visit a place called Patan, and you must have heard about Patan sarees, the Patan Patola sarees. And the family workshop still exists. You can visit them anytime you want, and they will tell you about their tradition and that how they are weaving sarees. But of course, there is this problem of the new market and how to deal with it. So it's a challenge.
So these are small kids, 6 years old, who are saying, I want to become an influencer. I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. Right. So how do we change this mindset of the kids and make them understand that their family, this is happening now. So this is not something that's been happening. This is something that this generation is facing. What would your solution be to this problem?
Okay, that's a little difficult to answer. I'll have to think about it.
We need more people like your father. Okay, then the problem will be solved.
So what I wanted to add was not a question, just quickly related to this. So I was in Ladakh for 1.5 months.
Yes.
There's a village called Likir, a remote village, where there's only one family keeping alive a traditional form of pottery.
Okay.
And now there's a graphic designer from Coimbatore who lives with the family, learns from them. So they are open to what he does with their work also. The other thing is the son has now encouraged the father to get a machine. That particular form is without the machine. So he says, let's do the machine one, because every new year, the Ladakhi people, like you said, the tradition, they have to buy the lamps. So he says, let's just machine make the lamps. And then parallelly, we can continue doing what we do traditionally. And now Varun Madhavan from Tamil Nadu, he's adding another dimension to the work they do.
So I mean, in some ways, machines can replace the traditional art, but I would say
they're keeping both alive.
But yeah, exactly. So that is the best thing to do, to have a combination, because there are so many traditional people, they tell us that you can't replace handicraft. So no matter what kind of machine you bring, you can't replace handicraft. So yeah, I mean, having a combination of both, that only the person who is in the handicraft can tell us about. Yeah.
Thank you for your...
Thank you.
Please give a round of applause. It's a very interesting topic. So this shows to us the need for preserving the Jatis, which are preserving knowledge. First of all, the Jati system has been reviled so much because it's put under the caste system. So by talking about this, how Jati is helping to transmit knowledge, we are going to change the narrative, and then maybe we can hope that there will be younger generation, which will not want to become a doctor or engineer and things like that, but rather preserve the family tradition, family craft, right?